Continuing with another aspect of the idea of spiritual progress, Blavatsky says something that I think is quite important. She says the goal of the aspirant for spiritual wisdom is the entrance upon a higher plane of existence. He is to become a new person. See, let us stop there because this is what we have been talking about. The aim is not at being more or less effective at doing things or developing more or less powers or this or that. What we are seeking is to start living from a higher perspective, from a different place. He's to become a new person in the sense of we have to discover a new aspect of ourselves. That is this aspect that is eternal, that sees things from a far higher, wider perspective. So spiritual progress is not about developing whether it is, knowledge or power or this or that. All those things may or may not help to this radical transformation, but the transformation itself is to change the way from which we respond to life. Externally, we may be doing exactly the same that we did before, but we are coming from, as Blavatsky says, a higher plane of existence, a higher consciousness. So to become more perfect in any way than he is at present, and if he succeeds, his capabilities and faculties will receive a corresponding increase of range and power. Just as in the visible world, we find that each stage in the evolutionary scale is marked by increase of capacity. So yes, it will happen, at its own time, that we may develop more knowledge, more skills, more power. That may happen naturally as a response, a result of coming or living from a higher perspective. But as we are going to see, that is not the aim of the spiritual path, of spiritual growth. The aim is this change of perspective. And all the rest will come about naturally when it does. So since it is not the aim of the spiritual path, we don't need to be worried about that. Whenever it comes, it's fine. And if it doesn't come, it's also fine. So she says, however, many persons seem to think that adeptship, that enlightenment, let's say, is not so much the result of radical development as of additional construction. They seem to imagine that an adept is a person who, by going through a certain plainly defined course of training, consisting of minute attention to a set of arbitrary rules, acquires first one power and then another, and when he has attained a certain number of these powers, is forthwith dubbed an adept. So you see this idea that a spiritual person, and this was very prevalent when the Theosophical Society was, starting, that people thought that adepts were these people that developed clairvoyance. Now they then develop the ability to travel in the astral body and develop the ability to materialize things, and then you are an adept. So Blavatsky is saying all that is irrelevant. I mean, those things do happen in the process of spiritual evolution, but all that is really irrelevant, are secondary aspects. What is necessary is this radical development, this essential transformation, which is basically, how to live from a higher point of view, from a higher perspective. And that is far more difficult than activating chakras or than learning how to manipulate Kundalini or prana or all those things. So she says, acting on this mistaken idea, they fancy that the first thing to be done towards attaining adeptship is to acquire powers. Clairvoyance and the power of leaving the physical body and traveling to a distance are among those which fascinate the most. To those who wish to acquire such powers for their own private advantage, we have nothing to say. So she says, those who want to acquire these powers for selfish reasons, well, do whatever you want. We don't have anything to say. But there are those, she says, they fall under the condemnation of all who act for purely selfish ends. But then there are others. There are those who sincerely think that in order to be spiritual or to be of help, they need to have these powers. So she says, but there are others who, mistaking the effect for the cause is this spiritual transformation in how we approach life, and the effect are the powers. But most people think the opposite. Most people think that enlightenment comes from awakening Kundalini, not that Kundalini awakens when enlightenment comes. You see, this is a typical problem in modern spirituality. The wisdom, the transformation of our consciousness is the cause, and the development of faculties is the effect, and not the other way around. So there are those who, mistaking effect for cause, honestly think that the acquirement of abnormal powers is the only road to spiritual advancement. The Theosophical Society, she says, does indeed desire to promote the spiritual growth of every individual who comes within its influence, but its methods are those of the ancient rishis. The rishis were like the sages in India. Its tenets, those of the oldest esotericism. The TS is no dispenser of patent medicines composed of violent remedies which no honest healer would dare to use. This was at a time where members were asking Blavatsky, about these powers. Okay, but teach me a meditation to awaken this or that, or to learn to, do astral traveling. So what Blavatsky is saying here, and she will mention it a little later, she says, sure, all these things exist. There are techniques that you can use to awaken all these powers, but as she says, these are violent remedies which no honest healer would dare to use. When you see other spiritual movements, they often have quite a number of people. If these other spiritual movements teach people, to manipulate the chakras or Kundalini or Prana or all these things, is quite common to have people in which things went wrong, and some of them stay incapacitated for the rest of their lives. And I know many cases personally, because sometimes, because of my role in the TS, people write emails to me asking me, what can I do? This is what happened. And it's very sad in many cases. And in my over 20 years within the Theosophical Society, I have never seen a member that goes through the spiritual training proposed by the TS that had any, side effect at all. Because what the Theosophical discipline proposes is safe. It may not be, exciting like developing new powers, but that is superficial. Leadbeater, who was an early theosophist, when he was ready, his master came, gave him a very specific meditation that was tailored to him and his inner constitution, and in 42 days he became one of the best clairvoyants in the 20th century, in 42 days. So you see that when the time is ripe, you can develop any of these in a very short time. How long does it take to get over our ego and to transform our view of life, where we come from? This is the important work. This is the work that may take a few incarnations. The rest is very easy to do. But if we do it before we have produced this transformation, many times it produces serious problems, and at best it gives you more faculties, but it doesn't give you more wisdom, more enlightenment, or any of that. So this is what she means when she says that the methods of the TS is that of the ancient rishis and the oldest esotericism, who, according to her, always placed emphasis on the level of work that she was proposing. So she says, in India, we have long been familiar with the existence of hosts of sham ascetics of all descriptions, and we fear that there is a fresh danger in this direction here, as well as in Europe and America. And this actually happened. Blavatsky was writing this in the 1880s, and it happened that how many gurus came from India that were just teaching how to develop all these powers. And in Blavatsky's view, that is the wrong approach to spirituality. It may be fine in India for people who lead a certain kind of life, for people who retire from the world. We talked a little about this, but not for a person that stays in the world and whose aim is not an individual development of faculties, but is to become a source of wisdom and love and compassion in the world for others too. Let's see some of the comments here. Is it wrong to have the expectation that one's efforts should be rewarded with a satisfactory result? Is even this type of reward to be avoided? No, you shouldn't avoid the reward, and you shouldn't expect it either, because expectations, on what basis are you going to expect anything? We don't know anything. We may be meditating for 30 years, and from our own ignorance, we may say, okay, if meditation is working, then I should be, the result of meditation working should be whatever we imagine, that I hear things, that I see things, that I feel happy and joyful. But we are saying all that from ignorance. In fact, from the Theosophical point of view, the effects of meditation happen on the inner bodies, the mental body, the astral body, the causal body, and those are the effects that are very important. And many of the effects of meditation may not come to the physical consciousness in any visible way. So whenever you have expectations, you are setting yourself for yourself the possibility of just ruining your work because of your ignorant expectation. Because if you think that this should be the result of meditation, when they don't come, you stop meditating, and then because of that, the benefit that meditation was producing on the higher planes stop. So again, it's not that we should avoid the rewards, but we shouldn't neither seek nor avoid. Whatever comes, you take it. Whatever doesn't come, you don't care. You do what you realize is good to do. If you realize that meditation is good, you do it because it is good, not because of things that you expect that will come out of it. And more power implies more responsibility. Yes. And then I knew someone who has many strange gifts, but it brought this person nothing but sorrow and troubles. It sadly affected most of this person's life in a negative way. Yeah, no, I know. I know many examples like that. Unfortunately, some people or organizations where either they don't know it, or I don't know, they have invested interests. And Blavatsky says, in this connection, we would warn all our members and others who are seeking spiritual knowledge to beware of persons offering to teach them easy methods of acquiring psychic gifts. Such gifts, lokika, this is a Sanskrit word, are indeed comparatively easy of acquirement by artificial means, meaning drugs or specific meditations where you are trying to stimulate certain things, and they are relatively easy to acquire, but fade out as soon as the nerve stimulus exhausts itself. The real seership and adeptship, which is accompanied by true psychic development, lokothra, once reached, is never lost. So in our next class, we are going to see more about this. Leadbeater talks quite a bit about these two methods, and we will see that. So we will finish with, what then is the aim of spirituality in the theosophical view. We were talking about this transformation and change of perspective, but I think, taking from HPV, from an article where a person was asking what is the aim of the spiritual life, she said there is but one self in all the infinite universe, and what we call self, the personal self, is but the illusionary reflection of the one self in the heaving waters of earth. True occultism is the destruction of the false idea of self, of personal self, and therefore true spiritual perfection and knowledge are nothing else but the complete identification of our finite selves with the great all. It follows, therefore, that no spiritual progress at all is possible except by and through the bulk of humanity. So we are going to explore all this in the future, but I wanted to bring this up so that we complete this view of what is spiritual progress in the theosophical view.